Good morning and welcome to the Hoosier Huddle podcast. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Along with me is T.J. Inman. Matt Weaver of Peaks.com should be joining us here in the middle of the podcast. So hopefully he hops on and we'll talk some recruiting with Matt. And then we'll talk recruiting between two of us and where IU stands in their 2025 class, how many more members of that class we expect. And then, going forward, what's their philosophy on portal guys, and when this class might wrap up. TJ, how are you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, definitely. We're right in the middle of the summer here, but season, what are we on now? Our countdown. What are we on? We're down to 60.
61 comes out
Yeah,
this morning.
yeah. So we're getting there. I know it's a long summer, but we're getting there. And today, recruiting a ton of IU recruiting action in the past couple of weeks. Curt Cignetti and his staff are just about done building their 2025, their first full recruiting class. And I think, look, nobody knows how these guys are going to plan out or play out. All that we can evaluate is who did IU beat, right? What offers did these guys have? Who did IU beat? We are not, talent evaluating experts. We've seen highlight tapes on a rare occasion. We've seen them play a couple of full games, but by and large, we're going off of their ranking and their offer list. So, who did Indiana beat? Who did they get for those with these commitments? And June was a pretty busy month.
Yeah, they had one big recruiting weekend around the 21st, and then they sprinkled in some other visits around June, and you also had that end of May um, recruiting visit as well. That was pretty big. So IU's class overall stands at 18 commitments right now. It's by 247 Sports composite ranking, it's ranked 48th in the country. At one point, that was in the top 25, but recruiting is so fluid nowadays that especially in the summer, classes get built up and a lot of fluctuation in the rankings happens. IU also has a couple commits where they're not ranked yet. Like Miles Kendrick, he is not ranked. He's the latest commitment out of Florida, and then Bryce Taylor, the kicker out of Bloomington, is also unranked. So those hurt the rankings and probably put them down. And if you put them as an average, 3-star for each of them, or 2-star for the kicker and 3-star for Miles Kendrick, that class goes up. Let's go through some of these June commits. And we'll go by rating and go down the list. Gervavius Hall, defensive lineman out of Columbia, Tennessee. He's 3-star, higher 3-star guy, was offered by Auburn, Duke, Georgia Tech, and other teams. What do you like about him being brought in? Also has a offer from Tennessee and Ole Miss and Missouri. Those programs are
Yeah.
pretty solid SEC programs. 6'2", 270 defensive lineman in a spot where IU's been pretty thin over the last couple of years.
Well, I think getting defensive linemen that are coveted by, upper middle class of the SEC and in Tennessee and Missouri's case and Auburn in a lot of years, that upper crust of the SEC, getting a defensive lineman that is coveted by those schools is a big win for Indiana. Um, I think that Hall is regarded as a guy that, number one, he's got the size. By the time he would line up for Indiana, you'd hope he'd be somewhere between 285 and 300, uh, and have the mobility and kind of those nimble feet that you look for in a big, successful defensive lineman. So it's a position that is really hard to recruit because everybody wants guys like that. And Indiana was able to get one of them um, with Hall. they stayed with the defense. Jalen Bell was the secondary was really kind of a big winner, if you will, in
Yep.
in the month of June. And we'll kind of group all of them together here. Um, Jalen Bell, Zachary Smith. Um, I know there was one more. Who am I missing there? Uh, well, Jalen Bell and Zachary Smith, and then they're still in on Shante Stewart, which is another one. They're hoping to be able to get him, and that would be three kind of high end 3-star, borderline 4-star corners and safeties that Indiana would get for that secondary. They're looking at versatile guys that are really quick um, and have good measurables, but I think in Jalen Bell's case, he's got everything you want, but he's only 5'11". If he were, 6'1", 6'2", he's a 4-star or above guy that probably IU wouldn't have a chance at.
TJ, we are now joined by Matt Weaver, so we could stop vamping on recruiting and and
Yeah, we
get
had
his
everybody fooled. We had everybody fooled. I believe it.
everybody fooled. Matt, welcome in. Matt Weaver, Peaks.com, recruiting expert and avid Reds and Pacers fan as well. Matt, how we doing?
Pretty good, guys. Sorry I'm a little bit late.
That's all right. You must have hit snooze a couple times, but
No, I was actually
that's
making breakfast for my kids. So
awesome. Um, Matt, take us through. June was a busy month for IU. You came off a big recruiting visit weekend at the end of May, and then had one in the middle towards the end of June on June 21st. How did IU come out of those two weekends?
8, 10. I got them with 12 commits in June, if I counted right. It was a good month. I mean, this class, as far as high school recruiting, is almost done. They wanted, excuse me, guys, they want to get 18 to 20. Um, they're at 18 right now, waiting on a couple guys. Drayden Pavey, who is committing, I think tomorrow, July 2nd. Ciante Stewart, who's committing, I believe, a week from today on the 8th. And I think that's kind of it as far as high school guys. I mean, they're still recruiting. Obviously, Julian Lewis, the big time quarterback out of Georgia, and they're still in the mix for him. I mean, there's a few other visitors who came in June who have not committed. Baylor Wilkin, offensive lineman from Ohio, and Winston Watkins, 4-star receiver from Florida. I think he's going to wait closer to the signing day in December. So I'm not sure where that'll go with IU, but I think they've had a good month. I mean, they missed on some guys, but that's going to happen. They've got a lot of the guys that they wanted. There's still a couple guys out there that they would really like to get that they have a shot with, and like I said, Pavey and Ciante Stewart.
So, are you looking at this class? If you add those Pavey and Ciante Stewart, would be at 20. You think this class gets to 22, a little bit above 20?
It's possible. I mean, Julian Lewis obviously is a take no matter what. So that would give you. Let's just say you got those two, and they were somehow able to flip him. That'd be 21. I mean, if there's another guy out there, and who knows, there could be coaching changes that come in December. I mean, their focus right now is going forward is going to be on the portal. Now, obviously, the portal, you don't know who's going to be available until towards the end of the season. But let's be honest, coaches across the country have an idea who might be going into the portal. I mean, it's just the way it is. So, but that's where their focus is going to be going forward. Adding portal, the portal class is going to be. I expect it to be maybe not as big. What was it this year? It was like close to 30, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's going to
29.
be 29. Okay, so I expect it to be, and obviously attrition will determine the final number, but anywhere from 20 to 25 portal guys. It'll be another big portal class just because they've got they brought in a good portal class for this year, but a lot of those are older guys, and you're going to have to replace those with guys who have some experience in college football. So another sizable portal class, but yeah, there could be a high school guy or two who pops free late, or somebody that's out there that they may have interest in, but their primary focus, like I said, going forward is going to be on transfers.
Yeah, Matt, it was I thought a very good month for the secondary and the defensive line. Uh, Defensive line really addressed a lot of needs with Hall, Tristan Abram, Tyler Garcia, and then in the secondary, Zachary Smith and Jalen Bell. Kind of looking at the defensive class as a whole that they added in June, I think it speaks pretty well to the defensive coaching staff and how dialed in they are, particularly Pat Kuntz, I think has really impressed thus far. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and I think Buda Williams also deserves a lot of credit. Obviously, Tyrone Burris having literally an 11th hour change of mind. I mean, that was done for Indiana. I mean, it was done. Alan True had the story, had the graphic ready to go, and the kid literally changed his mind a few hours before his commitment. So I mean, that's the way it goes. That's recruiting. And Mark Hagan's a good recruiter. Louisville's got a good, solid program down there with Jeff Brom and those guys. But that was definitely a little bit of a gut punch. But they've rebuilt this D line room. I mean, you mentioned the guys, and I think those two guys, Pat Kuntz and Buda Williams, deserve a ton of credit. Um, they brought in some guys who are legit, power four players, and some of the top guys on their board. Like I said, they didn't get everybody, but they got a lot of them. And then in the backfield, Garrett Reese, Byron Baldwin, who's a top rated player in the class, and then I heard you talking about Jalen Bell and some of the corners that they've gotten, Zachary Smith. So if you can cap it off with Deontay Stewart, then that'll be another huge addition. And then I think the rest of the defensive backfield will be refilled, like I said, by portal guys.
Matt, on the offensive side of the ball, you get Davion Chandler, who's an in-state kid. You flip him from Illinois. You also get Miles Kendrick, who's unranked at the moment, out of Florida. What has been the philosophy in the wide receiver room? It seems like adding more speed, and it has been a priority. Speed and playmaking ability.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw under Grant Hurd, he liked those bigger, Ty Freifogel, those kind of guys. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but I think you got to have a variety of receivers as far as what they can do. And I mean, with Kendrick, and I mean, I heard Davion Chandler absolutely tore it up at the 7-on-7 camp that IU had. That he looked fantastic. So I think that was a really good get. And obviously, if you can keep that, Lawrence North is starting to produce players. Obviously, with Donovan McCulley and Omar Cooper already at IU, if you can kind of keep that pipeline going, and the coach there is a former IU guy, and Patrick Mallory. So if you can kind of keep that pipeline going, that'd be great. But yeah, I think adding speed has been a big emphasis, not just a receiver, all over the roster. I mean, Indiana had some fast guys, but we've seen it. They needed to get faster in a lot of different areas, just more athletic, more explosive. And I think the guys they brought in, I think one of my favorite guys in this class is LeBron Bond. I mean, he's not very big, 5'9", 160, but this guy is just an absolute pocket rocket. I mean, he is incredibly fast, twitchy. I think he is going to be a lot of fun to watch in Curt Cignetti and Mike Shanahan's offense.
In terms of recruiting area, it seems like IU's recruiting from everywhere. In-state guys, you got a couple from Illinois, from Missouri, the St. Louis area,
North Carolina.
North Carolina, Virginia, that area. What is their philosophy of getting guys? It seems like maybe it's a little bit bigger than that 6-hour, 5-hour radius that coaches talk about. But it does seem that Cignetti's pulling from his connections on the mid-Atlantic states like Virginia, North Carolina, and then has guys in the Midwest and in some of those hot spots in, Indianapolis, the St. Louis area, and other areas. What has changed with their recruiting philosophy in terms of areas?
Well, I think early on, and I mean, it makes sense to me. Early on, you're going to hit the schools in the areas that you have contacts in. It'll be interesting to see going forward as they get more ingrained here in the state of Indiana. I think that will be their focus. And Curt Cignetti told me that when I met with him. Draw a 6-hour circle around Bloomington, and I think he'd like to get the majority of his recruits if he can in that area. Just and his philosophy is in this portal era, if you can get guys closer to home, they may be less likely to bail if things aren't going great at the beginning of their career, and they may, be a little bit more willing to kind of stick it out as opposed to a guy from, 4 states away. He may after 1 year, and I think it's a good philosophy, and I think there's some truth to that. I think early on, I think one area I think they've done a great job in is that DMV kind of Baltimore DC area. I think Ola Adams is the main recruiter there, and I won't be shocked if they put another guy in that area. There's a ton of players. I mean, obviously Maryland does a good job. A lot of schools do a good job there. There's so many players that I think you can be successful there. Tennessee is another one. They got a couple guys obviously from Tennessee. They'll continue to recruit the football states, Georgia and Florida, but I'm not sure the philosophy this year will be exactly the same. I don't think it's going to change a ton. I think there'll be more, around here focused. When I say around here, that 6 hour radius, going forward. I just think when you come in and well, first of all, they spent the first 2 months basically recruiting portal guys to build a roster for 24. You didn't have a ton of time to maybe you were behind in the relationship building with guys in Indiana and in the Midwest. Going forward, that probably won't be the case. It shouldn't be the case as you start recruiting them when they're sophomores and juniors instead of recruiting them, second semester of their senior or their junior year, going into their senior year. So, like I said, I think they will really recruit their own area hard, and then they'll branch out. They'll go to areas where they have good contacts, and then the new staff. I mean, remember they brought in what was about 4 new coaches, I believe, overall in the staff. Uh, so that you kind of had to see where those guys' connections were and kind of tap into those a little bit. And I think so far they've done a good job. They did a good job in the portal for the upcoming season, and I think this is a good solid class that they've started to build for 25.
Is the philosophy in the like they need to win now? We've heard Curt Cignetti say that he's here to win, and that's what he does. How important is it for them to get at least 6 wins this year? Because it seems like they've built through the portal and have a lot of veteran guys in there to set it up as, they're not going to win a national title this year, but to get to a bowl game, how much of an emphasis on that roster construction is it this year?
Oh, I think that's huge, and I think I mean obviously you had to go get portal guys, but he brought in a bunch of guys that know his system from JMU. He brought in guys that he competed against in that conference, and then some guys that that they were able to get from other places in the portal. I mean, in the portal era, it used to be coaches got 2, 3, 4 years to build a program. I mean, it's not the case anymore. I mean, you after 2 seasons, you're on the hot seat if you're not really showing pretty significant improvement. So and the other thing is, I mean, Curt Cignetti, you've seen him in press conferences, you've heard him talk. This guy isn't built to be patient. I mean, he's not built to go, hey, by year 3 we expect to be. He wants to start competing, and then the schedule, while it's not easy, is very manageable. We've talked about this, before in other podcasts. This is a manageable schedule, and by that I mean there is a path to 6 wins, and there's a path to starting off, 4-0, 5-0, 5-1, something like that. Where the second half, obviously, you got Michigan and Ohio State on that back end, but there is a chance, and there is a path to 6 wins. If you can obviously stay healthy, is going to be important, and you can get this, get this offense going, and the defense can hold its own. I think 6 wins in a bowl game is very, very doable. And I think it's big. I think it's really important to start off because this program has there's some buzz here. I mean, I know it's probably more local, but there's some buzz and people are very impressed with Cignetti and this hire for Indiana. But if you go out there and kind of lay an egg and you go 4-8, you're kind of, that all that momentum kind of comes to a halt.
Yeah. Yeah. I look at it as validation of, I think that there's a healthy level of skepticism, might be the wrong word, but I think that there are a number of people that see what Curt Cignetti and his staff have done, are excited about it, but also kind of in the back of their head are looking at it as, well, yeah, but that was the Sun Belt or that was FCS. And this is the Big Ten, and this is Indiana, and all we've done for the past however many decades is lose. And I think that there's kind of a healthy dose of skepticism that this time it's different. I think that there's kind of cautious optimism that it is, but if he comes in, gets that bowl game first season, I think you'd see a lot of that go away because he would have validated exactly what he said he was going to do when he took the job. Um, so I look at it, and you're right, the schedule is manageable is the way that I would kind of best describe it. Um, Real quick on Miles Kendrick, currently unrated. I know it's not your job to rate these recruits. Um, what is Indiana getting from Miles Kendrick? It looks like his offer list far outstrips, the non-ranking kid from Jacksonville, and another kind of smaller target. He's not LeBron Bond size. He is about 6 foot. Um, how is he going to fit in to what IU is looking for from the wide receiver position?
Well, I think the first thing is obviously he gives you some big playability. I mean, he is 6 foot, 165, so you're probably thinking slot, but I mean, he's got time to get a little bit bigger. I mean, I think at 6 foot you can play on the outside, and I mean, let's be honest, sometimes these heights are a little bit exaggerated. I mean, he may be 5'11" and change, but
Yeah.
I think you can play on the outside at that size, and especially in the spread offense era where you don't have to be Donovan McCulley to play out there. I mean, it helps, or EJ Williams, one of those guys. I think he's a guy you can move around, just try to get the ball in his hands. I mean, that's what I like about all these guys. I mean, they are all kind of similar in size. LeBron Bond's a little bit smaller than Kendrick and Chandler, but they all are so dynamic with the ball in their hands. And I think that's something that Indiana, while and I know Curt Cignetti really likes the wide receiver room, but the one thing this wide receiver room is lacking a little bit is a lot of top end speed. After Kobe, you don't have a bunch of burners. You got good players. I mean, Surratt's obviously a very productive receiver, but I wouldn't call him, an elite athlete. Same with Don McCauley is a good player, but he's probably not a 4-3 guy. But get more of those kind of guys, more of those kind of players, who can make plays in space. You can kind of get them the ball in certain ways, try to get them 1-on-1, and then let them do their thing with the ball in their hands. I think he's similar to the other two guys, which isn't a bad thing. You can move them around. They're make them chess pieces, of sorts. I think that's what he gives them. And then coming from the state of Florida, I'm always bullish on Florida guys. It's like recruiting basketball players from Indiana. It's just what they do. They play it they play it year round. It's just part of their lifeblood, so to speak. So I'm always in Indiana. Jacksonville has actually been a pretty good area for Indiana to recruit, even for previous staffs. A number of solid players have come from that area, and hopefully Kendrick continues that lineage.
Yeah, last one from me, another unranked guy, Bryce Taylor. Um, it's always interesting to see the philosophy of a staff on special teams, whether or not you're going to give guys scholarships, who you're going to pursue as long snapper, kicker, punter, those specialists. Uh, Bryce Taylor, kickers are not going to get rated typically from nationally, but well regarded from the kicking services at least. Uh, what have you seen from Bryce Taylor or heard from the coaching staff or coaching community locally that Bryce Taylor is going to offer Indiana as he comes in? It's a position that in a bit of flux for Indiana.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I'm pretty sure he camped at IU, and obviously he's a local kid there at South, just down the road. So they've been able to probably evaluate him, pretty thoroughly. It's interesting to me. This is specialist is one area where I don't have a great feel. I mean, obviously with Kevin Wilson, it was walk-ons. His thing
Right.
was to bring in walk-ons, and then if one guy won the job, maybe he got a scholarship for that season. Tom Allen's the exact opposite. I'm going to scholarship a snapper, I'm going to scholarship a kicker, and I'm going to scholarship a punter. I see both sides. I don't have a problem either way. I'm one of those, like, I honestly kind of sit on the fence. I understand in the 85 scholarship era, not scholarshiping specialists, but then I also see, a lot of games, and I know Sammy feels strong, a lot of games come down to special teams. It comes down to field goals. They come down to your punter being able to pin the team inside the 5 or 10 yard line. So, they have two kickers on scholarship this year. I think this is a little bit of a outlier because they're a new team, they're new staff, and you had no experience coming back. I mean, Radishik is obviously highly rated, but he's been injured quite a bit, and there's nothing to go on with him. So bringing in the guy from was it Law Tech, I think, McCormick, made
Yep.
sense. And my understanding is he's going to be more of the kickoff and like longer field goal guys, and then Radicic hopefully takes stuff like maybe 40 yards and in. So I kind of see that. Bryce Taylor, I think he could be a scholarship player, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it may be how the numbers work out and things like that, and maybe it's how does it work out with Radicic this year.
Right.
I'm not saying he won't be back, but I mean at some point, if the kid is not can't stay healthy and is not out there kicking, it's kind of tough to keep him, as a scholarship player. So, I think Taylor obviously, like I said, he's a guy they've evaluated. Kicker's always tough in high school because there's so many variables. If the snapper's not good or the holder's not good, a kicker could have a great leg and not look great. So, I mean, obviously, they're high on him. He's got a strong leg. So, I think he's got everything there to be successful. I'm just really interested. This is the one, like I said, the one area where I don't have a great feel. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the coming seasons, how they handle specialists. Will they try to bring in portal guys? Will they try to bring in? I mean, obviously they brought in Bryce Hubbard. Will they go the high school route? Will be more walk-ons and then they get a scholarship, or will they just literally try to go out and scholarship guys and bring them in? So it's gonna be fat to me. It's kind of that doesn't really needle. I think it's fascinating to see how they do specialists going forward because it's such an important part, an underrated part of a winning football program is your special teams.
Well, that's why I think they're in the win now mode, and it's the most telling. You had the number one long snapper in high school coming. They don't reoffer him, but they bring in Mark Langston from Georgia Southern, who's experienced, who's played college ball, who's good at long snapping, and there's no his snapping in the Sun Belt and snapping in the Big Ten shouldn't be that much different. The learning curve shouldn't be as big as jumping from high school and then bringing in a guy like McCormick, and of course you have James Evans at punter. But yeah, for special teams, that is the big tell of, hey, they're trying to win now. This isn't going to be a 2-year rebuild or a 3-year rebuild. It's what are and TJ, you've said this the last few years, winning on the margins. You've shored that up now with an experienced guy at long snapper, an experienced kicker, although he did not kick that well in the spring game. We'll see. You have an experienced option behind Radicic and other guys. So, I mean, we'll see. It's special teams. I thought Tom Allen, the philosophy there was fine, but you also had walk-ons returning punts after guys went down. And you have 85 scholarship guys. Okay, do you really need to scholarship a kicker when you could get another scholarship skill player who might give you more in the punt return game? I mean, rewatching the Maryland game from last year, Jalen Lucas was terrible returning punts. And he couldn't catch a punt to save his life, most of the year. And then you had 2021, I forgot the name of the walk-on, but Cincinnati, he's fair catching balls inside the 5-yard line. He's letting balls go at the 30-yard line that bounce. Those are the hidden yards that'll win or lose you a game.
Yeah.
And
and a lot of that is roster management where they missed in other areas and were carrying scholarship guys in positions like offensive line or defensive line, really along the line of scrimmage, carrying guys, 15, 16 offensive linemen, and 5 of them couldn't play dead. Or defensive linemen where there were, the bottom 3 or 4 that were on scholarship were never going to contribute in the Big Ten. And so you have those kind of dead scholarships. Yes, carrying a field goal kicker or, a long snapper on scholarship, that is an obvious thing that stands out when you end up having a walk-on returning punts, and that, it's a blinking red light. But for me, that issue was caused by those dead scholarships on the lines of scrimmage that were not going to contribute for Indiana when they were recruited, and then when they were brought in, it didn't change.
Yeah, and
So
walk-ons could return punts. One of the best punt
sure,
returners in IU
sure,
history is Mitchell Page, and he was a walk-on.
just not the ones IU was using this time. Not
No,
those guys.
not
No,
those guys.
no. Yeah.
All right, Matt. Any final thoughts, TJ?
No, I appreciate Matt's time. Of course, we'll obviously, he said there's kind of 2 or 3 guys, Julian Lewis being the third, that Indiana is still hoping to land here. We'll find that out kind of in the next week or so, and that'll wrap up the recruiting portion from there. Like everybody agrees, it's time to turn our eyes towards the season, one that I think we're all real excited about.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the season. Trying to block out some of these athletic department red flags that we've seen over the last couple weeks. But it's on the field stuff that matters, and maybe all those things get pushed aside. But it's been a tough week, couple weeks for the athletic department there. Matt, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, obviously, thanks again for having me, guys. Just actually, just kind of looking at, I've started the 2025 roster and having with 64 scholarship guys. So to me, it's just going to be interesting to see, where they go in the portal. I mean, looking at some positions, I think linebackers one where you're gonna have to get some guys, that's some DBs. They'll probably you try to get some D line guys. I like some of the young guys, but it's hard playing, those young guys. The one position that I think Bostad's great. A little disappointing they didn't get a high school tackle so far in this class, and I'm not sure that they're going to get one just based on what I've seen so far. So, and he's not a big portal guy, so it'll be interesting to see how they balance that because I think you got to at least get a tackle or two, a younger guy in this class. So, wide receiver, a couple guys, and then obviously the big thing is can they stay in it with Julian Lewis and can they potentially flip him, between now and that December signing period.
Yeah, and a lot can change in college football very quickly. We'll keep an eye on this paying players and how that affects revenue sharing, how that affects roster sizes, what happens to scholarships, how much each team is going to spend on football, and all that stuff. And we'll see. It's a very fluid situation. Matt, thanks for joining us. Good luck against the Yankees. Ellie De La Cruz is going to steal 40 bases in 3 games. So
you gotta get on base. You gotta get on base first.
Yeah, well, he's going to do the Ricky. He's going to walk and then steal first, second, third, and home. So, yeah, football's 61 days away from today, and I think IU is, looking in as good shape as they have been in the last 2 or 3 years. So, thanks for joining us, Matt. Tell us where people can follow you and find your stuff.
Well, obviously pigs.com, and then was it MB_Weaver on Twitter. Those are the 2 places. But yeah, I mean, I have stories coming out this week on guys who visited and some couple committed guys who had already committed to Indiana. On their visits. Well, I guess I should say they already committed. Andrew Barker. I think who else committed recently that I talked to. So LeBron Bond, I believe I have a story on him coming. So, yeah, pigs.com and MB_Weaver on, I guess it's not Twitter anymore. It's X.
X, formerly known as Twitter, just like, the artist formerly known as Prince. But you could read all our stuff at HoosierHuddle.com, our countdown to kickoff. We've also started our first glance previews that go much more in depth than other sites do on their opponents. We're up to Charlotte is coming out at the end of this week. So we've done Florida International, Western Illinois, and UCLA. TJ wrote that one up last week. So if you're looking forward to learning about IU's opponents, come to HoosierHuddle.com. Click on those. You can follow us on X at Hoosier_Huddle. Like, subscribe, comment on the YouTube channel as well. And that'll do it. We'll have more preseason podcasts coming up later this summer. Have a safe and happy 4th of July, fellas.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks.
Yep. Same guys.